There are some lies out there that people with Asperger syndrome almost always buy into. We always believe these lies. Now, this is not unique to people with Asperger syndrome. I suppose it could apply to just about anybody. But for some reason, those of us with Asperger syndrome seem to be a little bit more gullible, a little bit more what shall I say? I don't want to say believable, but we tend to have this capacity to accept what someone is saying on face value. It's kind of like somebody gives us a brochure for selling, I don't know, maybe they're selling a condo, a car, whatever. And we look at the brochure, or a college, we're looking at the brochure and we say, wow, this looks great. But when we get to see the actual thing, it's not what we thought it is. Now, you've been there before, right? You've seen an ad in a newspaper. Somebody's maybe selling a used car. And the way they've got it spelled out in the print ad, you think, man, this is the ideal car for me. But when you get there, it doesn't look quite as good as it did when they presented it. Well, there are people who sell themselves, kind of like they're selling a car or a commodity. And when they do that, number one is the lie is the false or the fake presentation. So when you are encountering somebody for the first time, well, let's say the second time. Now, let's say the third time or the fourth time or maybe the 100th time. Typically, what we find is that people who are highly deceptive, they're very good actors at keeping up the role, keeping up the character, keeping up the part, and at some point they're going to slip up, yeah. But if you are a person with Asperger syndrome, fact of the matter is, one of the traits of Aspies is that we're not very good at reading body language. We're not very good at reading facial expressions. And so when these people put on a fake act, well, neurotypical people may be able to see right through it, maybe not. It's very difficult for us to see through it. So what do you do with this? Well, what we have to understand is that we live in a world where people exaggerate. Now, everyone does this to some point, right? Do you remember the first time that you met somebody for the first time? Maybe your love interest or maybe a friend. Maybe you went in for a job interview and you met the human resources officer for the very first time. And what did you want to do? You wanted to make a good first impression. That's just human. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are some people who do that to the extreme. They are, okay, they're con people. They're grifters. That's what they do. Now, as a person with Asperger syndrome, you know, I got to admit, I've been ripped off by these people more times and for more resources than I care to admit. I mean, really care to admit, but that's part of it. So one of the reasons we do these series of videos is so that I can share with you some of the things that I've learned in my nearly 70 years so that maybe it can help you out along your way in life. So I don't know how old you are, but you know, if you're middle-aged or teenager, maybe even a child, I've been there. You know, if you're in your 80s, okay, I haven't been there yet, but most of life, I've been there. I've seen what it's like, and so I just want to make some videos here to kind of help you out, see what I saw. And what I have seen over and over again is there are some lies. We got 5 of them, and that's the tip of the iceberg. But there are some lies that people tell, and not just neurotypical people. I suppose Aspies do this too, but not nearly as extreme, because Aspies tend to be extremely honest people, but still, we do make mistakes. But the first one was, as we said earlier, false presentation. Think of every individual you meet as a sales brochure. What are they selling? Go out and about any place, wherever you go, you see people dress a certain way, they have their hair styled a certain way, they're making a presentation. They're telling the world, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. There's a lot of different things people say about themselves just by the way they carry themselves, by the way by the clothes they wear, by the language they use and how they use it, by their attitude, by the way they drive, by the way they talk, all those things. But as Aspies, again, we tend to look over those. So we got to be very careful. Number 2 is, this is all-encompassing, and that is a false reality. Okay, number 1 was a false presentation. That's the sales brochure. That's the outward appearance. Now, let's talk about the reality. It's not reality. It's what they want you to think reality really is. All right, so you've heard the sales pitch, and now they need to convince you that what they're selling is what they said they were selling, even though it may not be. Sometimes there are honest people out there. I know. I've met them. I've met lots of them, but I've also met a lot who are not so honest. So after they give us that sales presentation, the sales brochure, now they want to follow through because they want to get everything out of us they possibly can, but it's all fake. So they have this false reality. And it gets to the point where some of these people, I wonder sometimes if they don't believe it themselves. I know that some people, particularly if you're dealing with a psychopath or a narcissist, there's no way. There's absolutely positively no way those people could actually believe the lie life that they are presenting. Some of them, some people, maybe they actually do believe it because they've told themselves the lie so often that they've become their own victims. You know what I'm talking about? But this false reality is kind of like a stage play. We mentioned this in other videos. It's kind of like a stage play. And they've got their lines, they're reciting their lines, they're acting, they've got the wardrobe they're wearing, the stage makeup, whatever. And this is their life. Now, I've known some people who present themselves as being phenomenally wealthy. They live in a big house, they have really nice cars, they wear smart clothes, but they're behind in their bills. They're having a tough time keeping up appearances. Now, if somebody like that gets in your life, and for some reason they want you to believe that about them, why? Well, they want to fool people for some reason, including you, and typically it is because they want to take advantage of you and others. So if someone is living a false reality, you can almost take it to the bank that these people are doing that for a reason, and it's not a good reason. It's to take advantage of other people. Now, there's some people who go the other extreme, and there are actually people, believe it or not, who are people of means who live well under their means. That is to say, they could afford a nicer house, they could afford nicer cars, they could afford nicer clothes, they could afford to eat out at nice restaurants, but to them, it's just irresponsible. They drive around in pickup trucks because, well, you know, it's a practical thing to do. Those tend to be very honest people. So if someone is putting on the show, you know, maybe that's somebody you need to stop and think, is this really real? No, I'm not saying that all wealthy people are cons, but I am saying that if somebody is exaggerating, not only their sales brochure, but they're exaggerating their reality, that, in my opinion, somebody, okay, this is a lie. That's somebody we need to stay away from. Number 3 is false assurance. Okay, this goes a little bit deeper. Now, what we're talking about with false assurance is that we find that there are some people in our lives who want us to believe that they are trustworthy. We can trust this guy. This is your buddy, this is your friend, this is your love interest, this is whatever. And this individual is somebody that you can trust imminently. But once they've got you in their web, and they've got your trust, suddenly you realize that, hey, this is an act. Once they get you in so deep that you can't swim back to shore, they've got you where they want you. Now what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, there are some people who just give you a false assurance about themselves. These are scamsters. People with Asperger syndrome fall for this all the time. Now, sometimes they will pretend to be your best friend. I mean, they really care about you. And some people are good friends, and some people do care about you. But now watch out for these people. If you see someone who is abusing another individual, ask yourself, why would this person not abuse me? You say, well, because I'm their friend. That is not good enough. If someone is being, if you are trusting in somebody who is abusive to other people, that's somebody that you need to pay very close attention to, because chances are there will come a point in time when it is to his or her advantage that they will abuse you as well. That's a lie. That false assurance is a lie that we just cannot afford to fall for. Number 5 is this, what I call transference of blame. Okay, you've read the sales brochure, they sold you. You've seen their false reality, you thought it was genuine. You thought it was real reality. these people, in your mind, they convinced you that they were trustworthy, and now the whole thing falls apart. You now realize this person was taking you for a ride, so to speak. They were just taking advantage of you. And everything begins to crumble. And other people can see this, and they can see what's going on. Now what happens? Well, that other person transfers the blame to guess who? You. It's your fault. Now, keep in mind that people with Asperger syndrome are painfully gullible. So we believed everything up to this point. We may very well believe that we are responsible. That, by the way, is the essence of gaslighting. Convincing you that you are to blame for something that they did to you. Or convincing you that you are to blame for something that you had no control over and that you never did in the first place, and it may just be totally make-believe, totally made up. But almost always, when these people will give you this lie, that is the lie of transference of blame, they almost always do it to people they have victimized. That's a lie, just like the others, that we cannot afford to believe. Number 5 is this: false promises. When I see these people with their false promises and hear their false promises, one thing I note is sometimes they just flat out say it. They say that, not very often, but they may come out and say that I admit that I made a mistake and I'm going to change. Well, if you're dealing with someone who's like a narcissist or a psychopath, that's just part of the game. You know, they're not sorry. They're just still leading you on. I was going to say dragging you on, but yeah, dragging you on, leading you on with false promises. They're going to change. But what I've noticed is usually they don't say that. Because particularly somebody, again, who's a narcissist or a psychopath, they're just too proud to admit that they are wrong. But what they will do is they will give you the implication. They will try to convince you, not by the words they say, but maybe a hug, you know, maybe a big smile, maybe a pat on the back, maybe, oh, let me pick up the tab, I'll cover this one. It's the way they're behaving. It's the way they're acting. That have you had a person in your life like this who has just taken advantage of you, taken advantage of you over and over and over again, and now they're trying to reel you back in, trying to hoover you back in, suck you back into their sphere of influence by convincing you, oh, look, yeah, maybe I made some mistakes back then, but yeah, I realize it and I'm going to change. Typically, people just don't change. They do. But by and large, much of who we are was determined by our DNA long before we were born. Okay, I know that nature has significant influence on us, but by the time someone is past the age of 25, that is the point in time when a brain fully matures. It's very difficult to get somebody to change. And if this person is giving you the illusion that they are getting themselves straightened out, that they're, yeah, we're going to change for the good, I'd be very hesitant to believe that. Now, maybe a kid, maybe a teenager who realizes, okay, we did some really stupid things here. Now it's time to grow up and maybe get a college degree or get a job. Maybe I really don't need that big car, that flash car with a big engine. Maybe I need to get a minivan so I can tote around the kids and get a family. You know, they may grow up and change in that way, but by and large, if you're dealing with someone who's an adult past age 25, there's not a whole lot of change coming. And that illusion that they are going to change just by implication, that's part of the deception. That's part of the lie. So we need to be careful that we don't believe those false promises. See those two rectangles on the screen? If you like what you heard and you want to hear some more, we'll just keep on talking together, keep on our conversation. But if not, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.